Hey.
Hey, Glenn.
Sorry I didn't get back to you earlier, but I had been busy working with the cell on a couple of investigations. One was at the post office in Kempville, and the other one was based on people who claim to be religious but are cosmetic Christians or cosmetic Catholics. And one was with the cell themselves, and the other one was with a nun who in purgatory is responsible for women.
What? Let me understand that straight. A nun in purgatory is responsible for women who...
Yeah, well, women are not allowed to speak directly to anybody that's alive, but they can accept to have an intermediary who will answer questions on their behalf. The woman tells what she wants to say, and then you don't get the voice of the woman. The nun steps in and says, so-and-so said. Whereas with men, it can be directly, like with Tom.
Why is that?
I have no idea, because they don't discuss it. But that's the way it is, so... Probably because nuns run the show for women. Even after death.
That sounds crazy to me. A lot to wrap my head around.
It is crazy. But that's the way it comes through. The cell have no problem putting somebody on the Catmobile communications, but they're all men. Whereas women have a special problem, I guess one would call it. Maybe it's because they don't want to be on. I don't know. Maybe they want information passed out, but not have themselves there to answer questions. Got to remember that most of the women die with most of the money because they inherit their husband's estate, and usually that's a much larger amount than what they would have had on their own. Usually.
Yeah.
So maybe they don't want to discuss funds. Maybe the nuns don't want them to talk about what they do with the money that is ending up in the nuns' hands, because that's where most of the money goes, is to the nuns. They are as I've told you before, the largest money bags on Wall Street.
In our world, that is similar activity as far as women, the female side, as far as like in the system, the control, like the Amazonians you hear about. As far as I can know, the symbolism I see, like they are not ever seen. They don't speak to anybody directly. Like Neanderthal was more flamboyant, I guess you could say. You could see, even though they didn't want to be seen, but you could still see their influence. You could still see this, symbols that reference them. You can see that they had direct contact with humans, but as far as the Amazonians, it's like they don't have any contact. They do it through some type of intermediary or something.
Yeah.
So maybe I don't know. Maybe there's a reason for that. I don't know. They seem to.
Well, the nuns didn't get to where they are by accident.
Hmm.
You know.
So I called you the other day because I noticed by you there was a tornado, and right away in my mind I thought about the big 80, and possibly that could have been a symbol for those people in the system to go on with their. Because I remember that certain section in the 80 where like it just kind of stops, it changes, it shifts. I don't know if you were looking at that, if you noticed that.
Well, I know that there were 6 tornadoes in the Ottawa Valley. 3 on the Hull side, Gatineau side, Gate in water, and 3 on the Ottawa side. The ones in Gatineau were mostly in the area where I used to live. When I lived in Ottawa, I really lived on the Gatineau side of the river where I was building my cot. And the ones on the Ottawa side are in the south end of Ottawa, which is the closest to here. And we had a lot of broken branches, broken trees on the farm, but no destruction of anything that I've found yet. Came close, but not any destruction.
With this tornado, these tornadoes, I didn't think it was meant for any cataclysm. I thought it was meant as more of like a messaging type of.
Well, it could very well be that, pointing to the nation's capital without any previous attack. This seemed almost like an attack on the national capital.
Is there a history of tornadoes?
Not in this area.
More on the West Coast, or
more in, I'd say, the middle of the country, coming up from the U.S.
Okay.
In the Winnipeg, Saskatoon area more than anywhere else.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, because I know New York, I don't think they've had tornadoes. It's not something that's normal over here, East Coast.
Well, the nuns seem to be more interested in asking about individuals which they call cosmetic Christians or cosmetic Catholics. People who say they are, people who go to church, and all of that, but yet when you look at how they deal with other people, it's self-service is the main activity that you can identify. They do everything for gain, personal gain, and little for anybody else unless there's publicity involved.
I know that's the modus operandi for a lot of celebrities, because they whenever there's like an outcry from the public, that's when they'll make a stance about morality, because it's their brand they're protecting, their perception of. So.
And the other investigation for the men was on the post office side. The post office has been opening my mail specifically mail coming from the bank, receipt for money involving the mortgage of the property. They have even sent me, the first time I noticed it was because I received the envelope with my receipt in a big plastic envelope that says, sorry, but this envelope was opened in error. Now, how do you go about making an error with an envelope that comes from a bank that obviously has nothing in it except one piece of paper, which is the receipt for payment? And the last one seemed to be done with the connivance of the bank, because what they did is I always put a round off number of dollars in the account and say transfer to the mortgage. Well, that, when they open the envelope, doesn't tell them what the real payment is. So this time, the bank sent the receipt in an envelope that's not stuck closed. Just a little dot on the flap that could be pulled away, checked inside. And what the bank had done is take my round number that I always send, and instead of applying it to the mortgage, they deducted the part that was surplus to the mortgage and sent it back to my account, and then sent me a receipt with the exact amount of the mortgage payment. And I couldn't figure out why they would have done that. Then the cell said it's because the bank and the post office were working together.
Yeah.
They knew that the post office was trying to get that number, so they put it in a way in which the post office wouldn't have to send me a notice that they opened the envelope.
Oh.
So what the cell asked me to do as my part of the thing was to go to the post office, go to the counter, not just the box, post office box, but go to the counter, buy a couple of envelopes, put your keys beside their cash register on their counter, and leave them there. And we'll be checking, they said, what they do with your keys. Now, I don't know what the cell saw, but that was on Wednesday, and I had to go back on Saturday. And when I went back, I said, you know, the only place I could have left my keys were here on the counter while I was paying for the envelopes. And when I got home, I didn't have them anymore, so they must be here. And the woman was arguing with me because I had a joint account with Tom for the mailbox at the beginning, and she was saying, you know, the possibility of me getting anything was limited because they didn't have what I have, which is legal management of Tom's financial affairs. He didn't have any money, but I had the ability to go to his bank account and put money in or take money out from my own card. So anyways, there was a lineup of people behind me. And only when she realized they were all listening to her and her side of the argument didn't make any sense, because I showed her here's a bill for his telephone. It's addressed to him, but at my address.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And I paid a bill, and I have for years. So she said, well, I wouldn't do this normally, but I'll do it this just once. And she turned around and picked up my keys from the counter behind her. So she knew they were there all the time. And of course, they're not just the keys to the post office. There's 30 or 35 keys in two groups that are tied together. And the cell wanted to get fingerprints of the people who were handling the keys, that kind of stuff. Anyways, that's why I didn't call you back this week. Those two things kept me busy.
Wow, Glenn, that's something I in my mind, I'm kind of worried about when I think about it now, because they messed with the whole, electric bill. Now they're playing around with your mortgage payments. It's like they really are ramping it up as far as trying to get you off of that property. Yeah.
They want this place or they want me dead. Nothing else explains what they've done to Jennifer. Kidnapping her without a judge's warrant, even having a judge tell them not to do it, and they did it anyway. And it was an Iranian working for Canada's border security. So there's something going on that is bigger than just me. It's something that is connected to world events. With Donald Trump talking about a wall all the time, and the Bible talks about Joshua fought the Battle of Jericho and the wall came tumbling down. Well, the OPP that has my case, his name is Joshua. And he's done nothing that I know of to meet his promise that he would do what he could to bring Jennifer back. He has received instructions, I guess, mind his own business. Or he's in charge and he's not doing it. With a name like Joshua in the OPP, defending policemen who arrested Jennifer without a warrant on private property, married to the owner along with herself as now owner of the property, and being told by a judge on a video conference not to do anything with Jennifer. They did it anyway. Why? What was so dangerous to them? Is it because they have these ceremonies in California? They go and kidnap and rape women before they are allowed to become cabinet ministers? You look at Kavanaugh, the guy that's wanting to be on the Supreme Court, and they're going after him for something he did when he was 17 years old, if he did it.
Yeah. Yeah, I heard something like that. He said something, and they're coming at him for saying something he said.
Yeah, well, what he said is he was angry, and they're saying judge has no right to be angry. Well, if somebody came at me for something that I did when I was 17 years old, I wouldn't even know what it was they were talking about. because I don't remember what I did when I was 17 years old. But he had written it all down in a notebook, and he showed them that his father taught him how to keep a daily account of everything he did. And he still has it, and he was able to say, this is supposed to have happened on a weekend. I wasn't even in town on weekends. We were doing football practices someplace out of town. He was the quarterback of their team.
How can people even take it seriously about something somebody did when they're 17?
Well, they obviously have some important to them activity going on that they want to be able to control the courts.
So with this guy, Kavanaugh, was he showing any type of integrity, or was just somebody in their ranks that they don't want around in that position?
What he did not show any sign of that. He's been investigated at different ranks of becoming a judge. And the FBI has done all of the background checks. They never even mentioned the possibility of any complaint regarding sexual activity. Never mentioned it. But then a woman said when she was 16 and he was 17, 40 years ago or 30 years ago, he was at a party where she was, and she followed him into a bedroom with two other guys, and he's the one who or tried to rape her. I don't know if it ever got done.
Wow, I think maybe that's part of that whole. There's a movement. That's you know about it. They called it the Me Too movement, and it came out of the Hollywood guy Weinstein. And,
well, it's women, not women.
Yeah.
They are the ones who want to control space travel.
Yeah, that's what I've been seeing as far as the whole management up there. They're shifting. They're just taking control. They're changing the narrative. The narrative used to be, well, women, aren't capable of doing this and that. Blah blah blah. Men can lead a family, whatever. Now women can be independent. They don't.
Well, it's not all women. It's a special group of women, and they want to be hermaphrodites. They want to have children without the assistance of a male. What they don't yet grasp is, so does the system want them to be hermaphrodites because they want to send them off to explore rocks in the universe. And if they find something, they'll be able to unlock the sperm that will make them pregnant and have boys in space, millions of miles away. What they don't understand, I guess, is if there's nothing of any value, they're not given the combination to open the safe, and they basically die alone.
Interesting. He said that they want to be hermaphrodites.
They are being suckered and they think we're going to be more powerful. They'll be lucky if 1 in 100 survives. There's a spacecraft designed on the Acorn for one person, and most of the journey will be asleep. While they're asleep, they're going to be programmed. And when they arrive on the rock they've been sent to, they're going to go on a search for what is there on this planet, on this rock, that could in fact be useful back on Earth. So they'll do all the chemistry tests and stuff like that. And if they find nothing of any value, that's it. They are hung up on and left there to die.
These new slaves, it's not even like a settler, really. It's more of just a scout. It's
a one-way journey. No coming back. Too far in a lifetime.
So with the sperm, right, will they send that out, or will that be already like within?
Ready for insertion.
Ready for insertion. So where will that be? It'll be sent from Earth, or the sperm will just
it will have accompanied them, but locked up in a safe.
Oh, okay. Doesn't sound like an existence I'd want to live one.
No, but don't forget, they will be born on Earth, live to the age of 6, be put in a capsule, and exit the capsule with the equivalent of an age of 20 years.
Wow, so they won't be like born in space or anything. I guess wow.
All it is lie down here and we'll feed you intravenously. And if it all works, then 14 years from now, you'll arrive at your destination and you have maybe 20 or 30 years of exploration to do. And before you pass the age where you could have children, you will be given the combination to the safe so you can make babies if you found something of value.
Now, what will companies like Tesla and Amazon, what will their role be? Because I've heard that, I've seen that that's one of their goals is to,
Cell doesn't want to talk about any details but the superficial part.
Oh.
So they haven't told me any more than I just told you. Got to remember, the cell can sit in on their meetings without them knowing it. So they know a hell of a lot more than I do.
Did the cell tell you, like, what when they sit in meetings, where in the planet it is, or what individuals they're...
Well, I know they've sat in on police meetings and politicians' meetings and bureaucratic meetings. And I never heard them say they sat in on military meetings, but I suspect that there is a link between the cell and the military, but it's only a guess on my part. It's a guess based upon history, and every country that has evolved over time has either had a monarch who has been deposed or a bureaucratic gang that revolted. And at the end, the bureaucrats always prove to be self-serving instead of serving the people, and the military takes over. And we're at that stage right now.
Where the military takes over?
Yeah. It's more, they talk about it on the other side. As soon as the bureaucrats get to a point where they are totally out of control, they take no instructions from above, and they give nothing to the people down below, all in the context of gimme, 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 gimme for themselves. That means the end of the bureaucracy is near. Democracy may be the best system in the world, but it no longer functions. The laws are changed to permit them to do the things they want to do rather than what is good for the people. When that happens, the military has taken over. And that goes all the way back to Egypt.
You know, in history, with Plato, Socrates, they discussed democracy and they were very suspicious of democracy. They didn't trust it. They claimed that the democracy always ended in tyranny.
Well, democracy would be a great thing if it was ever to operate. But it only operates in theory and in classrooms and on the media.
Yeah. They'd have to have a whole other system and call it something completely different.
Yeah. When I was laying charges in Ottawa against the politicians, what I used was a process called private prosecutions, which means that under democratic rule, an individual who has had difficulty getting prosecutors to do the right thing can file directly and prosecute directly under the law called private prosecutions. Mm-hmm. Well, as soon as my case was done and I won, the Premier of Ontario, Bob Rae, and the Prime Minister of Canada, Brian Mulroney, got instructions from the media through the Globe and Mail newspaper that they had to change the law. And what they did was basically add into the section of private prosecutions a section that says can only occur with the permission of the prosecutor. Well, the prosecutor was the problem. The solution was private prosecution because the prosecutors were corrupt, and now they've returned to say you can't do private prosecutions without the permission of the guy you're trying to get around. So democracy, in theory, would have solved the problem. In practice, it never happens. they changed the rules of the game so that it could not be done again. And I think I told you once, I seem to remember, my lawyer had been a high-ranking member of the RCMP. And he was sitting in a classroom in the year following his degree. They have to participate in a law firm and go to classes and stuff like that. And the teacher was saying to the class that a crazy person like Glen Kealey, for example, he was talking in that period of time, a crazy person like Glen Kealey can go to court and have charges laid against senior politicians should not be allowed. And my lawyer, who they didn't know he was my lawyer, was one of the students in the classroom. And he got up and he said, maybe you don't know this, but I'm Glen Kealey's lawyer. And if we take what you say to the class for granted, addressing the teacher, then a crazy person can go to court, be heard by the most senior justice of the peace sitting in Eastern Ontario with a 30-year impeccable background, come to the conclusion after hearing 16 witnesses or thereabouts, most of them members of the RCMP, and come out of that saying there is sufficient evidence that this should go to trial. So what would you call the judge if she's taking a charge from a crazy person? Kealey did not charge the people. He simply asked that charges based on the evidence take place, and only the justice could make the decision on sending them to trial, which she did. So is she crazy too? Or is the fact that you're trying to get across that Kealey is crazy makes no sense?
It's dismissive. Oh, you're crazy.
That's the key to diverting democracy, is you call the person crazy. It doesn't matter that that person has never been to a psychiatrist, has never been called crazy, has even been called in the newspaper next to genius. And then because he charges politicians with the crime of setting up a 5% kickback system, then he's crazy. I told the Department of Health, I have a disability. It's a political disability. I tell the truth. The minute I tell the truth, I'm crazy. Is that it? That's how it works?
Yeah, well, people call you crazy because, yeah.
Because they're crazy.
Yeah.
They're crazy enough to go out and do things that make no sense and get away with it.
Mm-hmm.
So how can any citizen in the country believe that democracy functions when, number one, the justice deputy minister calls you crazy. Then they teach lawyers in classrooms that people who charge politicians are crazy without considering that it's a judge that makes the decision, not the person. And then gives the person a pension based upon being crazy, so that nobody in their right mind would refuse a pension because that's the only thing they have left to live on. But I went to court with witnesses, and I said to the guy at the front, you guys are here as a panel to decide whether or not I'm to get a pension. If I'm going to get a pension based on psychiatric reasons, I don't want it. If I'm going to get it because I have a disability called truth, then I want it. And they said in front of the witnesses that were there, Mr. Kealey, we have nothing to decide here. We've been sent by the department to say you have a pension, period. And they got up and walked out. And I got $700 a month or something at the time. Anyways, I got to call Jennifer.
Yeah. All right, Glenn. Well, thanks for getting back at me.
Okay. You too. Bye for now.
Okay. All right. All right.